What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 5 traits that all D1 level wide receivers possess. So we're going to be taking a look at this press release clip here, and something that all D1 wide receivers, or at least successful D1 wide receivers, possess: the ability to use a concept called the driving lane method off the line of scrimmage. So what do I mean by driving lane? So I'm sure all of you have probably driven in the car before or have driven a car, and you understand that you have, like, let's say we have 3 lanes, right? So we have the middle lane, which is where the DB is. Then we have the far left lane, and then we have the far right lane. If I want to get the DB to move to that far right lane, I actually have to step and bring my hips to that far right lane when I make my release. I think a lot of times when wide receivers do releases versus a press coverage DB, they do a lot of stepping, but they're in place. They just stay in that middle lane, and their hips don't actually move. You have to step to that outside lane because there comes a point in time where this DB eventually has to commit to what we're doing, and we have to make him commit to the outside by stepping there. So there's a perfect example of this from this wide receiver. He works this kind of like crossover type release off the ball into this whip route and just kind of pretty much turns this DB all around. So let's talk about this example here. So something I tell my receivers is you want to think that your hip is literally like attached to your foot. I also tell my receivers almost that your like head is also attached to your foot. A disciplined DB is going to be keyed in on my hip. So a lot of times receivers will do these like short choppy steps with their feet, and they just kind of like lean with their head, lean with their shoulder. That's not enough. Against an undisciplined DB who has his eyes high, yeah, that might get him to bite, but against a disciplined DB who's keyed in where he should be, the only way to get him to move is by stepping outside of his frame, but having my hip be attached to my foot so I'm inside of my frame. So when this receiver throws this move, pay attention to his foot. His foot, again, is at that outside lane. You see how it's not this really big step outside of his frame, because that's the other mistake the receivers will make. They'll keep their hips down that center lane, but then they step. And when they step, their foot is extremely wide and they have no explosion out of the break. Yeah, they're stepping far. Maybe they'll get that DB to jump a little bit, but because their foot is so far outside their frame, they can't push off of it. They can't go get up into the route. So that's why your hip has to be attached. I tell my receivers the position you want to shoot for is a stacked position. You want your head, your knee, and your foot stacked on top of each other in a column when you step to that driving lane. Not only does that sell it with your hip, but that allows you to step further to sell your releases, because now you're in a balanced position because your foot is under your body. Balance is all about keeping your feet underneath your shoulder frame, and if we can do that with our releases and step far enough, I guarantee you're going to start to get more separation versus a press coverage guy. And like, let's say he wanted to go, like, for example, run an outside release. Say he was running a fade. You could do the same type of concept with your inside foot. So let's play this thing again, full speed right here from this wide receiver. So first trait that all D1 wide receivers possess is the driving lane method off the line of scrimmage. So now we're going to take a look at the second clip here from this wide receiver from out of Georgia. And this is going to be more so top of the route focus. But before we break this down, you guys, if you are a wide receiver watching this video or a quarterback and you would like to train with us this off season, we are going to be traveling out to 11 more states across the entire country for 2-day long QB and wide receiver training camps, you guys. So guys, our next camp is this weekend in Austin, Texas. That camp is completely sold out, but we do have availability in our high school wide receiver group. So if you reach out to us via email, we'd be absolutely able to send you the information to sign up. And then our next camp, you guys, will be in Las Vegas. Then we'll come out to Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles. Guys, I'm telling you when I say this, all of these camps will be sold out by March 1st. So we'll have no more available spots. Our camps fill up insanely fast, and we limit spots so each athlete can get individual coaching and individualized training. We don't have a million people out there like we could, because we actually want you guys to have a good experience, learn something over the 2 days of the weekend. So guys, if you go to the very first link in the description below, again, very first link in the description below of this video, that is where you can sign up for one of our 11 remaining camps. You guys, we'd love to have you out there. 2 full days of training with myself and my staff of coaches. So guys, very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. So now trait number 2 is going to be at the top of the route, you guys. And I would say it's more so like mid route. But trait number 2 is for the wide receivers that are at that D1 level that can run great routes. All are able to use the like photo frame method. What is the photo frame method, or like the picture method? That means if I were to take a picture of this wide receiver at the first 5 yards, or I guess you could say like 3 steps of the route, it looks the exact same as the wide receiver at the top of the route right before he's about to break. And that concept is called selling vertical. So you guys have all probably heard that before. You've heard me say that before, but I use the photo method because it's just a way for wide receivers to think about it. So you watch this wide receiver come off the ball. He's running a curl route, and it looks the exact same right before he drops his break. That's what dropping on a dime is without using something called or giving away an indicator. An indicator is it's exactly how it sounds. It indicates to the DB when we're going to be making a break or when we're going to be making a cut. So at the start of the route, let's pay attention to three things. The three things that sell vertical are going to be your speed, it's going to be your stride length, and then it's going to be your body language, aka your pad level. So essentially just like, what are you doing with your chest and what are you doing with your hips? A lot of receivers come off the ball and they look just like this. Long strides, good body language, and they're running hard. But right before they're about to break, so this break is at like 12 yards or something like that. Right before they are about to break, these strides go from these full-length sprinter strides to kind of these like happy feet type steps where they chop their feet. What's that going to tell the DB? That's going to tell the DB that we're breaking. A lot of guys, right before they break, they get out of this posture position. They will raise up. They'll stand tall. Their head will pop up. Their chest will pop up because they're trying to naturally slow themselves down before they break. They know they have to drop their hips, but it's much easier to drop your hips when you're not running hard. So those two things will naturally change your speed. But if you could try to keep just a slight forward lean, you maintain your long strides, and at the break point, guys, you could trust your hips. The thing about receivers is you need a violent drop of your hips when you're selling vertical. That means like there is a string attached to your chin. Somebody pulls that string and you are dropping straight down to your knee, sitting your butt down like you're sitting into a chair and lowering your center of gravity as fast as possible. That is how you slow yourself down. You don't slow yourself down manually. You don't slow yourself down by shortening your strides, raising up so the break is easier. We want the break to be the thing that slows us down. And that's something that all D1 level wide receivers have in common trait-wise. They're able to use the picture method when it comes to selling vertical. If I take a picture of you on the first three steps of your route, it should look the exact same as if I were to take a picture of you on the last three steps of your route. Now, trait number 3 that all high-level wide receivers have, and this is for you bigger wide receivers out there, is they know how to use their size, right? So I would say, like, this is a good example of knowing how to use your size, but it could also apply to blocking. It could also apply to, like, a jump ball catch, but this is a release here called a shock release. So you bigger wide receivers watch this video. Hell, even you smaller guys who are maybe on the stronger side of things, anytime that you're bigger than the DB you're matched up against or stronger than the DB you're matched up against, this is a great release to use. So this wide receiver comes off the ball, bam, shock release. So literally it's just like you're pretty much just pushing the guy to the ground, honestly. And this is totally legal within 5 yards. Now, what this is, like if you're trying to set the tone early in a game, this kind of lets that DB know that, like, maybe I'm probably not going to be physical with this guy. Maybe I should be playing off a little bit more. I'm not going to be, it's probably not the best game to be playing press. You set the tone early with this. Set the tone early with this in one-on-one. Set the tone early with this in an actual game scenario. But really, the technique behind it is just like blocking, right? If you're trying to block a DB, and again, if you're a bigger wide receiver, use your size to the advantage in the run game. You want to make sure that you're under control when you're addressing this DB. You're not running like a bat out of hell and losing your feet. You're under control. You're in a low position. When you get hands on this DB, you drive up from your hips and your legs. You keep your feet underneath you and you drive, and you keep your feet active when you get hands on him. If you could do all those things, this shock release could work really well for you, especially if that DB does not see it coming or you are bigger than him. So trait number 3 for you bigger and stronger wide receivers, use your strength and your height to your advantage at that next level. Now, trait number 4 that all high-level wide receivers have, D1 wide receivers have, is they are able to react with their press releases. So this wide receiver is running a corner route. Now, here's the thing about this corner route. He's got a DB who is in head-up press. So head-up press is where the DB is right in front of us. We talk a lot about leverage, right? So we talk a lot about a DB who's shaded to the outside, DB who's shaded to the inside. Like if this DB was shaded over to the left to the inside, his goal is to not let us run to the inside. His goal is to don't let us run a dig, a post, a slant, and then force us towards the sideline, right? He's shaded towards the outside. His goal is don't let me run to the outside, force everything to the inside. So take away the fade, take away the corner, take away the out. Now, if he's head up, we could go either way, right? I could go to the inside or I could go to the outside. It kind of just depends on how the DB plays it. So that's why when we're facing a head-up press coverage DB, I love using this release called the split release. So a split release is where your front foot goes out and your back foot goes straight up, aka you're just splitting your feet. Older school coaches call this like a come to balance release. And that's totally fine too if that helps you think of it, because you're essentially coming to balance. But now we can't just, a lot of receivers will do this split release right here and they've already made up their mind on the direction that they're going. And you could absolutely use a split release if the DB is shaded inside. You could do a split like this. You could give a little move to the inside. We're going to show an example of that in a second to attack that DB's leverage and then take the outside release. But if he's head up, you don't know which way he's going to go. Like we could be wanting to split and take an outside release because we're running a corner route, right? So he could want to split release and take the outside release. But what if this DB jumps to the outside? What do? I got to be able to react and take what he gives me to the inside. We always want to have a plan with my releases. Like I always want to come up to the line with like, okay, I'm going to work this release. But if that DB takes it away or he changes up his coverage, he's trying to disguise his coverage, I got to be able to react on the fly as a wide receiver. And that's something all D1 level wide receivers can do. So let's play this example full speed. So this DB's in head up, but watch what he does. He shades to the outside. Okay, fine. Let's take the inside release. Let's work a move. And now we gave the quarterback space to throw us open. He didn't have to take an inside release on that. He did it because the DB took it away. So again, when you split your feet like this and both cleats hit the ground at the same time, you're in a position of balance. If that DB were to shade to the inside, what could he do? He could just push off of this inside foot and take the outside release, get skinny, and break it off. And it's especially because he's lined up like close to the hash marks, he's got a lot of space to begin with. So he doesn't have to take the inside release, but he does it because the DB takes away his initial thought process. I'm not going to pretend I'm in this wide receiver's head, but I can pretty much guarantee you that that's probably a reactionary situation. We don't want to release inside on an outside breaking route if we don't have to. We can do it. It's something that we can do, especially if the DB lines up outside shade and press to begin with. But if I could take an outside release on an outside breaking route, that's obviously always preferred. You just got to be ready to do both. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, trait number 5, you guys remember we talked a little bit about showing another example of a split release. This is a great example of adding something to your releases, and that's the 5th trait that all D1 wide receivers have, is the ability to, I guess you could say, like, add more advanced things to the basic things, right? So a split release is a basic concept. Like I worked that with 9-year-old wide receivers, 10-year-old wide receivers, high school receivers. Like it's a basic concept. You could always add a little like something to those basic concepts to make it either faster, quicker, be able to sell the release. And this is a great example of something called a kick step split release to make that split of your feet a little faster. Now this DB's lined up a little bit like, I would say like head up, but this receiver works as like split jab release, which is where you do the same type of split, but you kind of sway your hips and sway your upper body to the outside. Because remember, a disciplined DB is watching our hips. So swaying our hips to the outside might get him to jump a little bit more to the outside or attack his leverage if he's outside shade. So I want you to pay attention to his back foot before he does that split. You see how much faster that split was than the other wide receiver? Like, let's look at the examples here. Like, I'll play at full speed, this first example. So split release, right? Now let's show the second example. Look at the difference in speed, you guys. Split release. So there's just way more just like violence to his feet, way more quickness to his feet. And it's set up by what he does with his back leg. This movement right here with his back foot is called the kick step. You are literally just pretending there is a bug behind your front foot. In this case, it's his left foot. You're trying to step on the bug. And what that does, you see how it kind of like loads up his hips? That allows you to split more. Like it allows you to it almost causes like a coil or a spring of your hips. I highly recommend you try this, you guys, before you think that that kick step is a false step. For some of you, it might feel weird and maybe you don't want to do it, and that's fine. But for some of you, it might feel really, really good and you have a lot more speed and a lot more explosion. And it's the same type of release. Both feet hit the ground at the same time. Your back foot is going up. Your front foot is going wide. Just that kick creates momentum and it loads your hips to be able to explode into this and be able to just explode your feet out wide. So it's a textbook way to make a more advanced release. So again, 5th trait all D1 wide receivers have in common is they could add more advanced things to the basic concepts of this position.